Hey, welcome to this episode of Throttle Stop Garage, where we're going to make the frame for the trunk. Okay, so you will have seen in the last episode, so that's going to be episode 55, we had some problems with getting the trunk skin pulled out of the mold. I can only blame myself for that. I think I rushed the release agent application just a little bit, and I might have polished it a little bit too hard. So live and learn. But in the meantime, we're going to turn our attention to the trunk frame. Now, originally on the project, I thought, I'll just use the steel frame. And that would be fine, right? I'll just adhere the steel frame to the carbon fiber part. But then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, there really isn't any point. Once I'm in this far, it's just making, in this case, 2 more molds. Anyway, so these big indentations that are in the panel would effectively lock that panel into any one piece mold, right? So if you've got this here, this is a negative angle, it's never going to come out. You're going to have to pull something this way. I couldn't figure out how this could possibly ever come out of a single piece mold. All right, the next problem is the skin overlaps the panel, which isn't a problem. That's the normal way of attaching a skin to a frame, is you overlap it, and then they've given a couple little spot welds around the edge. But what it does is it makes this edge thick. So if I was to fill that edge, which I've seen on other videos, I'm going to end up with sort of a really super thick edge, and I don't want that. And there's also just big areas of air here. So when I'm making this 2-piece mold, what I've got to do is cut the skin off, which seems a little crazy. I can then add the flanging material I need to the original frame. Fiber parts, they don't really move. So you have to be quite careful when you're putting these together, because they're not going to just sort of, you're not going to be able to manipulate them. You're not going to be able to change their shape in order to make them fit. I want to make sure that this fits the opening really well so that I get a nice seal all the way around the panel. This trunk never fit my car very well. So the other night I spent a couple hours just doing foot and lever manipulation. So I bent it around to get it into the right shape, but once I get the skin pulled off, I can then further verify that I have the right shape. All right, with the cutoff wheel on the grinder, we just get the spot welds knocked off, and then I'm going to break out the 5-inch grinder and just cut through the edge of the panel very carefully, and then it's easy to knock the panel off. I had sandblasted this panel, and look at all the sand that's come out. Now, this is a clean panel that I'd painted and prepped. Just staggered by how much stuff came out. Anyway, the edge gets a little bit of extra work there, and knock it off with a chisel, and then bingo, out she comes. Now, the edge of that panel actually shows quite a bit of corrosion and was a little bit weaker than I'd hoped for. So it was quite flexible and would move pretty freely. I wasn't expecting that, so that was entertaining. It made fitting it up to the car quite a bit more difficult because it just simply didn't want to hold its shape. Now, in we go with chopping the edge off this the crazy shattered panel here. Actually, the panel's fine. It's just the primer that's ruined. So anyway, so that... Anyway, just a diamond wheel. These are just the cheap Amazon purchased diamond wheels. They're working really well. Get your personal protective gear on. Get a good dust filter mask on for this stuff. Do wear a face shield. And anyways, off it comes. It just buzzes off there pretty quickly, actually. I was pretty impressed with how fast it went. I also have a bigger diamond wheel. It's a 3-inch. Now we start with fitting the trunk frame into the trunk. So first I had to make sure the shape of the trunk was okay, and it'd been beat in a little bit at the back. So out came the slide hammer, and I whacked that around. And then on and off, and on and off, and on and off. I cut this down, folks. Like, I must have taken that thing. It took me about 2 hours manipulating it with pliers and hammers and dollies and other things until I was satisfied that I had a really good fit all the way around the trunk. Like, it has to fit, well, it doesn't have to fit perfectly, I suppose, but for me it has to fit perfectly. Again, as I said at the start of the video, once this is created in carbon fiber, what I'm doing right now with the steel, the bending it over, you can't do that with a carbon fiber part.
It's not going to bend. It's not going to move. It is going to be whatever you put in the mold. So you need to be super careful and make sure that that mold, the part that you're molding, is accurately fitting the car. Right, with the panel now happily fitting the hole, which was a lot of work. I think you got that idea from the last little segment there. I needed to add some stiffening to it. It doesn't have if it has a skin, it's fine. Without a skin, it's pretty floppy. So I balanced it on the little work table there and got ready. Got the welder out, actually. Felt pretty good for a change. Welding something instead of making fiberglass parts. So just adding some cross bracing into this whole production to stiffen everything up, which was easy to do. And honestly, you have no idea how good this felt. Right, with that the stiffening cross brace on, now I'm going to cut the spot welds off and remove that back panel because I'm going to need to make the 2 molds. So the back panel came apart pretty easily, nothing moved, everything is great. And then it's just a matter of cleaning up the spot welds that were there and getting it all prepped and ready. So originally the trim panel that goes in is just, it's held in by some parts of the metal that were just broken out in little tabs. So I'm just hammer and dollying those back into place, which was super easy. Then giving it a little light sand with some 180 grit sandpaper because it was epoxy primed in advance. So that's fine. Just make it nice and smooth for when we get going with the flanging material here. And then I'm just carefully using the hammer and dolly again whenever I find a little dent, just to pop all the little dents out. So just, these are really light taps, like no big hits or anything. So there's no need for filler on any of this stuff when I'm done. Well, I never did like the wrinkles at the edge, so I filled those up in preparation for making the mold. And you can see me every once in a while pull out my infrared temperature gun. I'm just testing the temperature of the part. It's okay for the body filler. It'll still harden at 10, 15 degrees. But I know that the Gelcoat specifically is not going to be very happy if the part's really cold. So I don't really have the furnace up high in the garage in the wintertime. And now a quick trip to the border to pick up fiberglass supplies.
It's as much fun as we can have at the border today. Took an hour to get through the lineup just to get across the line. 10 minutes to pick up what I needed. Good use of my time today. Anyway, there's all this stuff in the back. Now we go home. Enjoy the ride.
All right, so we're getting rolling on the flanging again, using the metal flashing material as my flange material here. I'm not going to bore you with the whole piece, but it just gets hot melt glued down. You can see me putting it down there. So a few clamps just to sort of hold it in place. And it's a nice smooth surface. The only problem is it is a little bit floppy and flimsy, and I'll show you how I have dealt with that as I'm sort of learning and modifying the techniques that I'm using in here. It's not you're not watching a pro do this, folks. This is just a guy in his garage, so doing the best I can. In fact, the one thing I think I would change is the use of the packing tape at the edges. Like, I have to be a little bit more careful with that. I was a little haphazard with it. I'm just making some end pieces to close off the ends of the part, and then going on the main frame, right? So just using foil tape there to plug the holes, and then they'll get filled with that modeling clay when I'm done. Again, just using the same material all the way around. This is sort of funny actually to watch as I'm about to make a big mistake here. So I'm just I'll let it play, and then I'll tell you where I made the big error. So you'll sort of see it on the way by. It's all, I leave it in, folks. This is real. Okay, so this is the back panel going in. Just gluing and holding as I get it bent up. That worked really nicely. All right, now this is where I make the mistake. So I'm putting the end flange pieces on. Notice the one side, I added a little bit to extra to the one side. I forgot to add the extra to the other side. Oh, well. Anyway, so now adding the sealing, the modeling clay there just to seal around the edge of the mold again. You put it in carefully, and or not so carefully as the case may be, and then you use that tool just to smooth it out. Make that line as nice and smooth and clean as you can. Matters on the finished part. Just makes it a whole lot easier to see what you're doing. Right, so to handle the stiffening problem, I have a bunch of foam board in the garage that I got for nothing, so I'm just gluing, hot melt gluing again. Where would we be without the hot melt glue gun? And I'm just adding that to the back of the flanging material to give it some good stiffness. Okay, so next up, first we start with proper polyester gel coat, tooling gel coat. This stuff's marvelous. I never knew. I just used regular gel coat before. So that was my big shipment from Composite Envisions, was a bunch of new products to try. And I put, again, putting the gel coat down. I am brushing it, but I'm brushing it in 2 layers. And again, you can't normally see me do this, but I do have a gauge that you use to test the thickness of the gel coat. So once it's dry, I then have purchased veil, right? So fiberglass veil material. Now, I didn't know veil was like a continuous strand material, so I should never have done it this way. Like, you can see the mess that I've made there, and I have to now sort of sluice the mess out. I never knew. Anyways, veil is more like cloth than it is like chop strand mat. So if you're using veil, it's wonderful, it's great, it worked perfectly, but treat it more like cloth, less like chop strand mat. So this is a mistake. Like having this big piece and then trying to get it all jammed in there, that's a massive don't do. Just cut it into thinner strips and put it in, and then life will be good. So I'm just sanding the part here now, and then I'm going to get going with different weights of cloth. I only use cloth. I didn't use any chop strand mat in any of these molds that I made. And then you can see there the blue squeegee. Man, that thing is the best way to put material down and get it compressed and everything. So I just squeegeed it in and away I go. Now on the bigger of the 2 molds, I was having massive problems getting the sort of groove in between the 2 humps of the panel to work. It just wasn't going to work. The cloth just does not want to go through that kind of a contortion. It just didn't want to work. So I just grabbed some of that spare foam and I built up the layers inside at first, then put the foam on, then fiberglassed over top of the whole thing to cap it. So now the cloth just has to go up and down. It doesn't have to go up and down and up and down. So that actually ended up working just fine. And then the cloth could be laid on quite simply. So we're starting with a couple layers of reasonably thick material and then moving our way up to some pretty heavyweight material. I think it was 12-ounce material. I don't remember what that is in grams, like 400 grams per square meter or something. It was pretty hefty. So it builds thickness really quickly, and it actually worked really nicely. These are still among the nicest molds I've made so far. Anyway, again with the squeegee, just touching up the sides and getting them all in there. The brush is still in use, but the squeegee was used far more. So you can see how wide the mold is. That's 50-inch wide material. So it's, that's a lot of centimeters. So anyway, I can't always do the metric conversion. I'm sorry for all the metric folks out there. Canada still uses construction materials and everything from the US, so we still have inches in play. So that is what it is. Anyway, so in we go with the last of it. There is a total of 6 layers of cloth of various weights in there. This is really nice. Okay, now for the big test. Got to get the actual metal part out of here. I don't know what I'm saying. They sort of twist and crack their molds, so there's no twisting and cracking this one. I may have overdone it. Oh well.
Okay, so that popped. Just saw a little bit of light there. Oh, yes. All right, so I got defeated on the trunk. I did not get defeated on the frame so far. Jeez, don't talk so quickly. That looks really, really good. It's a lot of hours, just a lot of hours to get yourself to there. But that mold's just fine. That's the first one that I've built that I don't see any flaws in. Wow, who knew? I am going to be recycling the cross brace. I'll be taking it off of here and then attaching it to the mold on the other side. Or at least I'm pretty sure I'm going to do that. I'm never 100% sure until I'm doing it, so. Yeah. Okay. I mean, other than too sharp a line, which I don't care about. So let's try that on the other side. I want a trimming blade. It's popped out of here. It's where or not it'll go. Probably. The draft angle makes me want to turn it, right? Up and turn. Up. Turn. Woo! One of those times you need a third arm. There we go. One side. Pop.
Well, nothing hurts much more than having to fix a brand new mold. So there I am adding the piece that I didn't add when I first made it. But you can see nicely how that veil goes in, right? The tooling gel coat went down, the veil goes in. Then I just used some of the short strand auto body filler, the Dynaglass, to stick on the cross brace, which worked great, just stuck right in. And then I put all of the fabric materials on in one hit. Like each one going, and notice they're all different widths as I'm trying to overlap, right? So they're going in different widths, so smaller at the start, much wider at the end. And then that one just going in at 45 degrees to the other ones for no real reason. So, and now everything's done and we're just giving it a quick wet sand and getting ready to get the final mold inspection and all the tidying up done that has to be done for every mold. None of this takes minutes. This is no less than 2 weeks worth of work that's been compressed down here for your viewing pleasure. So the wet sand was no big deal. There was no flaws in that mold. I'm still stunned that there was no flaws in that mold. The big mold had a few little issues that I'm going to show you here right now.
Okay, so I'm just about done with this particular frame mold here, and I just wanted to give you a quick zoom in. I didn't get some of that done, but the detail on the frame, super happy with most of it. There were just a couple of little areas in here and along this edge I had some small problems with, and some issue with just the area here. that I'm fixing up both sides, actually, about the same. The orange tape that you see on here is just identifying flaws. So I carefully check and inspect each one of the areas and then flag them just for further remediation. So they just need a little bit of sand to be done. The other mold pretty much came out exactly the way it just popped out of the mold. Right, so all I've done here is sand the surface with 400 grit and then 600 grit sandpaper. Really all it needs for this, it is getting primed. And I've now gone through the process of both sealing the mold. They've only been sitting for 2 weeks, so that's pretty minimal time to allow all of the styrene that's in it basically to go off and do whatever styrene does. And then I've put that release agent on very carefully this time. Each coat has gone in separately. Each coat has gone in full and complete. I've not polished a single thing. I've just simply given it a very quick wipe with a fresh, clean microfiber cloth. That's all that I've done.
Okay, so that's a wrap for this video. Once again, if you're enjoying the videos, please like and subscribe. Hit the bell if you want to see content when it comes out new. And we're carrying on, right? So the frame molds are now done, and we're going to get ready to lay up the frame in carbon fiber. So that'll be the next video. Thanks again.